Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Frontier Spirit, watching the stars through the main viewing screen. His ship was 3 weeks into a routine exploration mission near the edge of human space. The crew had been mapping new star systems and looking for planets that might be good for future colonies. Jake was a tall man with brown hair and steady blue eyes. He had been commanding ships for 15 years, but he had never seen anything like what was happening on his screens right now. "Captain, we have something strange out here," said Dr. Lisa Hamilton from her science station. Lisa was the ship's chief science officer, a smart woman who had studied alien technology for most of her career. She was frowning at her computer readings. "What kind of strange?" Jake asked, walking over to look at her screen. "There's an object about 2,000 kilometers away. It's not natural. Someone built it," Lisa said. She pressed a few buttons, and the main screen changed to show a close-up view of the object. Jake felt his heart skip a beat. The thing floating in space was clearly not human. It was about the size of a small building with smooth purple metal and strange symbols glowing along its sides. It had a shape that reminded Jake of a sea creature, with long curved sections. That looked almost alive. "Tony, are you getting any signals from that thing?" Jake called to his communications officer. Tony Rodriguez looked up from his station. He was a young man with black hair who had joined the crew only 6 months ago. His face was pale as he checked his equipment. "Yes, sir. It's sending out some kind of transmission. It's trying to communicate with us," Tony said. "The signal is very strong, and it's using multiple frequencies." "Can you understand what it's saying?" Jake asked. Tony worked at his station for several minutes. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's engines and the beeping of computers. Finally, Tony looked up with a worried expression. "Been running it through our translation programs. It's learning our language very quickly. I think it's ready to talk to us now," Tony said. "Put it on speakers," Jake ordered. The bridge filled with a strange voice that sounded like metal grinding against metal. But the words were in English, even though they sounded wrong somehow. "Small ship of the weak species. You will stop your movement. You will listen to the words of the great Zephyrian Empire." Jake looked around at his crew. Amy Carter, his security chief, had her hand on her weapon. She was a tough woman who had served in the military before joining the exploration service. Her green eyes were alert and ready for trouble. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earthship Frontier Spirit," Jake said clearly. "We are on a peaceful exploration mission. Who are you, and what do you want?" The alien voice came back immediately, sounding annoyed. "I am High Commander Vextal of the Zephyrian Probe Ship Designation 774. Your species has been observed. Your planet, called Earth, has been marked for integration into our empire. You are a primitive species, suitable only for basic labor tasks." Jake felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. Earth is not available for integration. We are an independent species." The alien voice made a sound that might have been laughter, but it was harsh and unpleasant. "Your opinion is not required, small creature. Your species shows no signs of advanced development. You have barely left your home star system. You have no real weapons or defenses. It will be useful for mining operations and agricultural work under proper supervision." Lisa was typing quickly at her station, analyzing the alien probe. She looked up and shook her head at Jake. Her expression said that the alien technology was more advanced than anything humans had. "The Zephyrian Empire claims this entire region of space," the alien continued. "Your species will surrender within 30 of your planet's day cycles. If you refuse, pacification protocols will be implemented. Your cities will be destroyed, and your population reduced to manageable levels." Jake took a deep breath. He thought about Earth, with its blue oceans and green continents. He thought about the colonies on Mars and the moons of Jupiter, where millions of humans lived and worked. He thought about his sister Mary, who taught school on Luna, and his parents, who still lived in the house where he grew up in Ohio. "Commander Vextal," Jake said in a clear, steady voice, "I want you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you." The bridge was completely silent. Even the computer sounds seemed quieter. "Earth and all human colonies are off limits. We are not primitive. We are not weak. And we are definitely not available for integration into your empire." Jake paused, making sure his words were being recorded clearly. "This is your only warning. Stay away from human space." The alien voice came back quickly, and now it sounded angry. "You dare to threaten the Zephyrian Empire? You're insects compared. To our power, your warning means nothing. In 30 days, your world will belong to us." "Tony, cut the transmission," Jake ordered. The bridge was quiet for a moment. Then Amy spoke up. "Captain, should we try to capture that probe? We might learn something useful from it." Jake shook his head. "No. Let it go back to wherever it came from. I want them to deliver our message exactly as we gave it." "Sir, do you really think Earth can fight these aliens?" Tony asked. "Their technology looks very advanced." Jake smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile, Tony. "There's something these Zephyrians don't understand about humans. We've been fighting wars and solving problems for thousands of years. We've survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and every other disaster you can imagine." He turned to look at the alien probe on the screen. "They think we're primitive because we haven't spread across the galaxy yet. They think we're weak because we don't have their fancy technology. But they're about to learn something very important about humanity." "What's that, sir?" Lisa asked. Jake's smile became colder. "They're about to learn that the most dangerous thing in the universe is a human being who's been told he can't protect his family." He turned to his crew. "Set course for Earth. Maximum speed. We need to warn everyone what's coming. It's the frontier." Spirit turned toward home. The alien probe watched them go. Then it activated its own engines and disappeared into the darkness between the stars, carrying Jake's warning back to the Zephyrian Empire. Neither the humans nor the aliens knew it. But this first meeting had just changed the future of the entire galaxy. The Frontier Spirit arrived at Earth 5 days after the alien encounter. Captain Jake Morrison had pushed his ship's engines to their limits during the journey home. As soon as they entered Earth's solar system, Jake sent an emergency message to the United Earth Defense Council. Within 2 hours, Jake found himself sitting in a secure meeting room deep under the mountains of Colorado. The room was filled with the most important military and government leaders on Earth. President Helen Martinez sat at the head of the long table, her face serious as she listened to Jake's report. "So these Zephyrians gave us 30 days to surrender," said Admiral Patricia Stone. She was the head of Earth's space fleet, a woman with gray hair and sharp eyes who had spent her whole life preparing for this kind of threat. "What do we know about their military capabilities?" Dr. Maria Santos, Earth's top expert on alien technology, pulled up images of the alien probe on the main screen. "I've been studying the data Captain Morrison brought back. Their technology is definitely more advanced than ours in some ways. They have faster engines and what appears to be directed energy weapons." General Rick Thompson leaned forward in his chair. He was a big man with a stern face who commanded Earth's ground forces. "How advanced are we talking about? Can we fight them?" "That's the interesting part," Dr. Santos said. "Their technology is advanced, but it follows very predictable patterns. It's like they've been using the same designs for a very long time. They might be powerful, but they don't seem very creative." Defense Minister Carl Brooks spoke up from across the table. "What about their numbers? Do we know how big their fleet is?" Jake shook his head. The probe commander mentioned an empire, which suggests they control multiple star systems. "But we don't know how many ships they can send against us." President Martinez stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the mountain valley. 30 days isn't much time to prepare for an invasion. What are our options? Admiral Stone activated a holographic display that showed the solar system. "We have defensive platforms around Earth and the major colonies. Our fleet has 47 combat ships, with more under construction. It's not much against a galactic empire, but it's what we have." "What about evacuation?" asked Dr. Santos. "Should we start moving civilians away from the major population centers?" General Thompson shook his head. "Where would we move them? If these aliens control multiple star systems, nowhere in human space is really safe." The room was quiet for a moment as everyone considered the situation. Then President Martinez turned back to the group. "I want to know everything we can learn about these Zephyrians in the next 30 days. Dr. Santos, I'm giving you unlimited resources to study their technology. General Thompson, begin preparing defensive positions on Earth and all the colonies. Admiral Stone, I want every ship we have ready for combat. Meanwhile, on the mining colony of Kepler 44b, Sam Johnson was reading the emergency message that had just arrived from Earth. Sam was the colony administrator, responsible for the safety of 8,000 miners and their families who lived on the rocky planet. His wife Kate was sitting across from him at their kitchen table, watching his face as he read. Kate was a terraforming expert who had spent 10 years helping to make the planet suitable for human life. How bad is it? Kate asked. Sam looked up from his tablet. Pretty bad. Earth thinks we might be invaded by aliens within a month. There. Recommending that all outer colonies prepare for possible attack. Kate was quiet for a moment, then stood up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the lights of the mining complex where her neighbors worked every day to extract valuable metals from the planet's crust. We can't evacuate 8,000 people, she said finally. We don't have enough ships, and there's nowhere to take them anyway. Sam nodded. That's what I was thinking. But maybe we don't need to evacuate everyone. What do you mean? Up the colony's construction plans on his tablet. Most of our important facilities are already underground because of the mining operations. What if we expand the tunnel systems? Create hidden shelters where people can stay safe if the aliens... Come, Kate looked at the plans with interest. She was an engineer, and her mind was already working on the problem. We could use the old mine shafts. There are kilometers of tunnels that aren't being used anymore. With some work, we could hide the entire population underground. And if the aliens think the colony is abandoned, they might not look too hard. For survivors, Sam added, across human space, similar conversations were happening on dozens of colonies. On the agricultural world of New Kansas, Farmer Pete Williams was organizing his neighbors to hide food supplies in underground storage areas. On the research station orbiting Jupiter, scientist Nancy Clark was working with her team to move important data to secure locations. Back on Earth, in a small town in Ohio, elementary school teacher Linda Harper was explaining to her students why they would be practicing new safety drills. She didn't tell them about the aliens, but she made sure they knew where to go if the emergency sirens ever sounded in space. Technician Roy Mitchell was working at Deep Space Monitoring Station Alpha, one of several hidden observation posts that watched the edges of human territory. Roy had been alone at the station for 3 months, the only company the automated systems that scanned the darkness between the stars. His partner, Linda Harper, worked the night shift while Roy slept. Together, they maintained the sensors that would give Earth its first warning when the alien fleet arrived. Roy was checking the long-range scanners when he noticed something unusual. There were faint energy signatures at the very edge of sensor. Range too far away to see clearly, but definitely not natural. Linda, take a look at this, he called. Linda floated over to his station in the low gravity of the small space station. She studied the readings with a frown. Those look like engine signatures, she said. Multiple ships still very far away. But heading in our direction, Roy felt his heart start beating faster. How many ships? Linda worked at the computer for several minutes trying to get a better reading. Finally, she looked up with a pale face. Count at least 50 separate energy sources. Probably more that we can't detect yet. Roy reached for the emergency communication system. It was time to warn Earth that the 30 days might be shorter than anyone had hoped. The alien fleet was already on its way. Admiral Vexmore stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominator, watching the star charts that showed the primitive human territory ahead. He was a tall alien with purple skin and 4 arms, wearing the golden armor of a Zephyrian fleet commander. His species had conquered 47 different worlds over the past 2 centuries, and he expected this campaign to be just as easy as all the others. Sub-Commander Nelves, what is our current position? He asked his tactical officer. Nelves was younger than the Admiral, with darker purple skin and silver armor. He had studied the battle records of previous Zephyrian conquests and was eager to add humans to that list. We are approaching the outer edge of human space, Admiral. Our scouts report that the first human colonies should be visible within 6 hours. Admiral Dexmore nodded with satisfaction. His fleet consisted of 68 warships. It's more than enough to crush any resistance from a primitive species that had barely learned to travel between stars. "Have the humans made any attempt to contact us since we entered their territory?" he asked. "No, Admiral. Our communication officers have detected no transmissions directed at our fleet. It appears they are too frightened to respond to our approach." Admiral smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. This was exactly what he had expected. Most primitive species either surrendered immediately or simply ran away when faced with Zephyrian military power. 6 hours later, the fleet arrived at the first human colony, a mining operation on a small rocky planet. Admiral Vexmore expected to see frantic activity as the humans tried to evacuate their people and equipment. Instead, his sensors showed something puzzling. "Sub-Commander, are you reading this correctly?" he asked, frowning at his displays. Nelves checked his instruments twice before responding. "Yes, Admiral. The colony appears to be completely abandoned. No life signs, no power signatures, no communication signals." "Send a probe to investigate," the Admiral ordered. The probe descended to the planet's surface and transmitted images back to the fleet. The mining facilities were still intact, but there were no humans anywhere to be seen. Equipment had been left behind, but all the people were gone. "Perhaps they fled when they detected our approach," suggested Nelves. Admiral Vexmore considered this possibility. It made sense that such a weak species would run rather than fight. "Move to the next colony. They have all evacuated. We can occupy their facilities without wasting ammunition." The fleet moved deeper into human space, finding the same situation at every colony they visited. Agricultural worlds, research stations, and mining operations all appeared to be abandoned. The humans had apparently evacuated their entire outer territory. "Admiral, this is almost too easy," said Chief Engineer Kextall from his station. "The humans have left behind billions of credits worth of equipment and infrastructure. Either they are incredibly wasteful, or ... or what, Engineer?" the Admiral asked. Kextall hesitated. "Or this is some kind of trap, sir, but that seems unlikely." From such a primitive species, Admiral Vexmore dismissed the concern with a wave of one of his 4 hands. "These humans are clearly cowards who ran at the first sign of superior force. We will occupy their abandoned colonies and use them as bases for the final assault on their homeworld." But as the fleet continued toward Earth, strange things began to happen. Navigation systems on several ships started giving incorrect readings. Communication arrays experienced periodic interference that made coordination between ships difficult. 3 vessels reported power fluctuations in their main engines. Kextall reported to the Admiral after investigating the problems. "Sir, I cannot find any mechanical cause for these malfunctions. The symptoms suggest some kind of external interference, but our sensors detect no hostile activity. Could it be natural phenomena, solar radiation, or magnetic fields?" the Admiral asked. "Possibly, sir, but the pattern of failures seems too coordinated to be random." Admiral Vexmore was beginning to feel uneasy, but he pushed the feeling aside. His species had not built a galactic empire by being cautious about minor technical difficulties. On the abandoned mining colony of Kepler 44 to be, Sam Johnson was watching the alien fleet through a hidden camera system. He and his wife Kate were in an underground shelter with the rest of the colonists exactly as they had planned. "The aliens are landing troops at the main facility," Sam whispered to Kate. "Just like we hoped they would." Kate nodded and checked her tablet, which showed the status of the hidden devices they had installed throughout the colony. "All systems are ready. Should we activate them now?" Sam thought for a moment. "Not yet. Let them get comfortable first. We want them to think they're safe." Far above them, Zephyrian soldiers were exploring the abandoned mining complex. Squad leader Zector was puzzled by what he found. The humans had left behind valuable equipment, but they had also removed some things that seemed unimportant. Subleader Vakins, why would the humans take their communication devices, but leave behind heavy machinery worth 10 times as much? He asked his second-in-command. Vakins examined the empty communication room. "Perhaps they are not as intelligent as our intelligence reports suggested, squad leader." But Zictor had fought in many campaigns, and something felt wrong about this situation. The colony was too perfectly abandoned, as if the humans had planned exactly what to leave behind and what to take. Something about this place makes me nervous. Meanwhile, on Earth's moon, technician Danny Foster was putting the finishing touches on a project he had been working on for 3 years. The device looked like an ordinary communication satellite, but it was actually something much more dangerous.
How many of these do we have in position?
Asked his partner Rachel Stone. Danny checked his computer. 47 satellites around Earth, 32 around Mars, and smaller networks around the major colonies. The aliens won't see them coming until it's too late, and they'll think they're just communication equipment. Danny smiled. That's the idea. These Zephyrians seem to think we're stupid. They're about to learn that underestimating humans is a very bad mistake. Back in space, Admiral Vexmore was approaching Earth's outer defensive perimeter. His sensors showed exactly what he expected to see: primitive satellites, old space stations, and what appeared to be communication equipment orbiting the human homeworld. Prepare for final assault, he ordered his fleet. These humans have run out of places to hide. But hidden among those innocent-looking satellites were weapons that no alien species had ever seen before. Human engineers had spent years designing technology specifically for this moment, and now it was time to spring. The trap. The Zephyrians were about to discover that humans had not been running away. They had been hunting. The battle began without warning at exactly 0600 Earth Standard Time. Admiral Vexmore had ordered his fleet to take positions around Earth for what he thought would be a simple planetary bombardment. Instead, space around Earth suddenly erupted with weapons fire from directions the Zephyrians had never expected. Danny Foster's hidden satellites activated all at once, revealing themselves to be powerful laser weapons disguised as communication equipment. The aliens had been surrounded by a network of deadly traps for hours without knowing it. What is happening? Admiral Vexmore shouted as his flagship shook from multiple impacts. Where are these attacks coming from? Sub-Commander Nelves was frantically checking his sensors. Admiral, the primitive satellites are firing at us. They were weapons all along. 3 Zephyrian ships exploded in the first 30 seconds of combat. The aliens had expected to face a few crude human warships, not an entire planet that had been turned into a fortress. On Earth's surface, Fighter Commander Julia Adams was leading the first wave of human fighters into space. Her squadron consisted of 20 small ships that looked nothing like traditional military vessels. 2 alien eyes. They appeared to be modified cargo haulers and mining ships. Remember, stay close to the asteroids and use the debris fields for cover, Julia told her pilots over the radio. These aliens have never fought anyone who doesn't play by their rules. The Zephyrians tried to respond with their standard battle formations, but the human fighters moved in ways that made no sense according to galactic military doctrine. Instead of lining up for formal combat, they darted between asteroids, used Earth's moon as a shield, attacked from multiple directions. At once, squad leader Zector was still on the surface of Kepler-4 for 2b when the fighting started. He had been exploring the abandoned mining colony when his communication equipment suddenly went dead. A moment later, the ground began to shake. What was that? Asked Subleader Vakins. Before Zector could answer, explosions began erupting. All around them. The mining equipment that the humans had left behind was revealing its true purpose. Drilling machines turned into missile launchers. Processing plants became weapons factories. Even the lights in the tunnels were designed to blind alien eyes. We're under attack, Zector shouted into his radio, but the communication system was still dead. Fall back to the landing ships. But when his squad reached the landing area, they found their ships destroyed by explosions that had come from underground. Sam Johnson and the other colonists had spent weeks placing charges throughout the complex, turning the entire colony into one massive trap. Back on Earth, the real surprise was just beginning. General Rick Thompson was coordinating the ground defense from a command center deep under the Colorado mountains. His forces consisted not just of professional soldiers, but ordinary citizens who had volunteered to defend their planet. Sir, the aliens are trying to land troops in Sector 7, reported Major Laura King. Send in the Detroit unit, General, Thompson ordered. The Detroit unit was led by Frank Miller, former police officer who now commanded a group of factory workers, mechanics, and other civilians. They had spent the past month learning to use weapons that had been built in the same factories, where they normally made cars and appliances. When the Zephyrian landing ships touched down in what they thought was an empty field, they were met by humans using tactics no military academy had ever taught. Frank's people had turned construction equipment into weapons, using bulldozers as tanks and cranes as artillery platforms. "These are not soldiers," complained Zector's replacement. Squad leader Tekvar as he watched human civilians attack his troops with welding torches and industrial tools. "They are using farming equipment as weapons." But the humans were winning. Donna White, who normally worked in a clothing factory, was operating a modified textile machine that fired steel cables at alien aircraft. Steve Adams, a grocery store manager, was using his knowledge of supply chains to predict where the aliens would attack next. The most shocking moment came when the Zephyrians intercepted human military communications. Instead of hearing desperate pleas for help, they listened to conversations between officers like Colonel Jim Baker and Major Laura King, who spoke about the invasion as if it were just another engineering problem to solve. "Enemy ships are concentrating. In grid reference 4 for Alpha," Colonel Baker said calmly over the radio. "Recommend implementing Response Plan 7, confirmed," replied Major King. "Initiating controlled demolition of the Harbor District. Evacuation complete." The aliens watched in horror as the humans deliberately destroyed their own cities too. Deny them to the enemy. Entire neighborhoods disappeared in carefully planned explosions that trapped alien ground forces and cut off their supply lines. Dr. Gary Lewis and Dr. Susan Perry were working in a secret laboratory under the ruins of Chicago, where they had been reverse engineering alien technology captured in the first day of fighting. They had already figured out how Zephyrin energy weapons worked and were building improved versions. "The alien power systems are actually quite simple," Dr. Lewis told his assistant. "They rely on brute force rather than efficiency. We can build better weapons using the same principles." Admiral Vexmore was beginning to understand that his empire had made a terrible mistake. His fleet had lost 15 ships, and the humans showed no signs of surrendering. Worse, they seemed to be learning from every battle, adapting their tactics faster than his forces could respond. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the human capital," reported the communication officer. "Put it on speaker," Dexmore ordered. The voice that came through the speakers was calm and professional. It belonged to Captain Jake Morrison, who was now commanding a ship built from captured alien technology. "Admiral Dexmore, this is Captain Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. I believe we met 30 days ago when I warned you to stay away from human space." The Admiral said nothing, waiting to hear what the human would say next. "You chose not to listen to our warning," Morrison continued. "Now you're learning why Earth is off limits. Your invasion has failed. Your ships are being destroyed. Your ground forces are trapped on planets that have become prisons." Morrison's voice became harder. "I'm going to give you one chance to withdraw your forces and return to Zephyrian space. If you refuse, we will hunt down every ship in your fleet and destroy it." Admiral Vexmore looked around his bridge at the faces of his officers. For the first time in his military career, he was facing an enemy that might actually defeat him. Humans had kept their promise. Earth truly was off limits. Admiral Vexmore stared at the communication screen for a long moment after Captain Morrison's ultimatum ended. Around him, his bridge crew waited nervously for orders. The Admiral's 4 hands clenched into fists as he considered his options. "Admiral, what are your orders?" asked Subcommander Nelves. Before Vexmore could answer, another alarm sounded. The tactical display showed new ships approaching from the edge of the solar system. But these were not human vessels. "Admiral, we are receiving a priority transmission from High Command," the communication officer reported. The screen flickered and showed the image of Supreme Admiral Kexron, the highest military commander in the Zephyrian Empire. Kexron was ancient even by alien standards, with skin so dark purple it was almost black. His armor was covered in decorations from 100 conquered worlds. "Admiral Dexmore, explain to me how a primitive species has destroyed 23 Ships of my fleet, Kexron's voice was cold with anger. Dexmore straightened in his command chair. Supreme Admiral, the humans are not as primitive as our intelligence suggested. They have technology we did not expect, and tactics we have never encountered. Tactics. Kexron's eyes narrowed. You're telling me that insects with barely functional space travel have defeated trained Zephyrian warriors? Sir, I recommend immediate withdrawal. I need time to study their capabilities and develop new strategies. Supreme Admiral Kexron was silent for several seconds. When he spoke again, his voice was deadly quiet. There will be no withdrawal, Admiral. I am taking personal command of this operation. Prepare to implement Protocol 7. Dexmore felt. His blood turned cold. Protocol 7 meant the use of planet-killing weapons. Zephyrian Empire had only used such weapons 3 times in its history, and only against species that had proven too dangerous to be allowed to survive. Supreme Admiral, surely that is not necessary. The humans can still be defeated through conventional means. The humans have embarrassed the Empire, Kexron replied. It must be completely destroyed to maintain our reputation. Protocol 7 will be implemented in 6 hours. Transmission ended, leaving Dexmore alone with his thoughts. He had spent his entire career serving the Empire, but he had never ordered the complete destruction of a species before. Something about the humans bothered him, though he could not quite identify what it was. On Earth, Captain Jake Morrison was meeting with Fleet Admiral Kevin, his heart in the same underground facility where the crisis had begun 30 days earlier. The room was filled with military leaders and scientists who had been monitoring the alien communications. We intercepted their transmission, Admiral Hart told the group. The Zephyrians are bringing in a planet-killer weapon. We have maybe 6 hours before they try to destroy Earth completely. Dr. Walter Green, who had been leading the team studying captured alien technology, spoke up from his seat at the conference table. We've learned a lot about their systems in the past week. Their planet-killer weapons are powerful, but they take time to charge and they have to get close to the target. Close, asked General Mary Campbell. About 1/10 the distance from Earth to the Moon. The weapon has to be almost on top of us to work effectively. Admiral Hart nodded. Then we make sure it never gets that close. Captain Morrison stood up and walked to the tactical display. Admiral, I have an idea. What it's going to require. Every ship we have, plus some we haven't built yet. Explain. Morrison pointed to the display showing the approaching alien ship. The Zephyrians think we're still a primitive species fighting with basic technology. They don't know we've been reverse engineering their equipment for the past week. Dr. Christine Bell, who had been working with Dr. Green's team, activated a holographic display showing new human ship designs. We've built 12 new vessels using captured alien technology, combined with human engineering. They're not as big as the Zephyrian ships, but they're faster and more maneuverable. And they have one more advantage, Morrison added. The aliens have never seen anything like them before. 6 hours later, Supreme Admiral Kexron arrived at Earth aboard the Annihilator, a massive ship designed specifically to destroy planets. The vessel was 10 times larger than any other ship in the Zephyrian fleet, and its main weapon could crack a planet's crust with a single shot. Begin charging the primary weapon, Kexron ordered as his ship took position near Earth's moon. But as the weapon powered up, something unexpected happened. The space around Earth filled with human ships, but they were not the primitive vessels the aliens had been fighting for the past week. These new ships moved with alien-level speed and fired weapons that looked suspiciously similar to Zephyrian technology. Supreme Admiral, the humans have ships we have never seen before, reported the tactical officer. They appear to be using our own technology against us. Kexron watched in growing alarm as the human fleet surrounded his massive ship. There were more than 50 vessels, all moving in perfect coordination. This is Captain Jake Morrison, came a transmission from the human fleet. Supreme Admiral Kexron, you are surrounded. Power down your weapons and prepare to surrender. Impossible, Kexron snarled. These creatures cannot have developed such technology so quickly. Morrison's voice came back immediately. You're right. We didn't develop it. Stole it from you and made it better. That's what humans do. We learn, we adapt, and we improve. The Supreme Admiral looked at his tactical display. His one massive ship was surrounded by dozens of smaller vessels that could attack from any direction. Even if he fired his planet killer weapon, the human, ships would destroy the Annihilator before it could escape. You have 30 seconds to decide, Morrison continued. Surrender now, or we will demonstrate why Earth is off limits. Kexron had two choices: surrender to a primitive species, or die fighting them. For a proud Zephyrian admiral, there was really only one option. All ships open fire, he ordered. The battle lasted exactly 4 minutes and 17 seconds. When it ended, the Annihilator was a drifting wreck, and Supreme Admiral Kexron was dead. The remaining Zephyrian fleet immediately surrendered. 3 months later, Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Earth flagship, the Defender. He was reading a message from the Galactic Council, an organization the humans had never heard of before the war began. Tony, send this reply to the Galactic Council, Morrison told his communication officer, who had been promoted after their victory. Tony looked up from his station. What should I tell them, Captain? Morrison smiled as he looked out at the stars. Tell them that humanity is open to trade and diplomatic relations with any peaceful species, but also make sure they understand our position clearly, which is, and all human colonies are off limits to hostile action. Any species that threatens human citizens will face the full response of the Earth Defense Force. We gave the Zephyrians a warning. They chose not to listen. Morrison paused, thinking about the war that had changed everything. Make sure every species in the galaxy gets the message. Humans are willing to be friends, but we will not be victims. Earth is off limits, and that warning is not negotiable. As the message went out across the galaxy, ordinary humans like shopkeeper Bill Murphy and librarian Carol White returned to their normal lives. But in the background, the massive human war machine continued to grow stronger. It was ready for the next species that might be foolish enough to test humanity's resolve. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Never underestimate the species that calls Earth home.